Thank God for skills like self-belief, determination, and conviction. As I remember it, because I'm getting old now, we get told through life that these sort of qualities are the ones that you need to, quote, succeed. Yet society, I think society makes it so hard to not just attain them, but when you get them, they get beaten out of you as well. As
Mm,
I got older, I started to believe in myself more. And I sometimes wonder what my life would have been like if I'd had more conviction to follow a different path, one whose, sort of calling got louder and louder over the years. I mean, it doesn't do anyone any good to kind of reminisce about this sort of shit, but, it does intrigue me how we are so different in our makeup. That makeup that's been formed through what we experience from childhood and onwards, and how that sort of affects the decisions that we make. Um, my guest today had that very conviction to swap, a looming career in law for music, and here we are, where they've just released their third EP called "Play at Your Own Risk," and it's the continuing evolution of a catalogue over the past sort of 8 or 9 years, that from both a musical and lyrical perspective, I find brooding, defiant, intense, sparse, claustrophobic, emotional, and very on point. Given the sort of the vicious, divisive shit that's happening in what feels like every part of our lives today. And I think it's satisfyingly hard for the industry to put the music into one of the genre boxes. And I'm very happy to say this, because I've always believed that sort of using genres is a tool that the system uses to keep society in its lane, to kind of know its place.
mhm,
So before I get even higher on my high horse, I'm going to introduce my guest,
mhm.
and it's a pleasure to welcome EB Rebel. EB, thanks so much for coming on. It's really really good to see you.
Well, it was good to meet you and happy to be here.
Brilliant. So let's maybe start with the new EP. That seems like a as good a place as any to sort of start, which has been out what, a couple of weeks now.
Yeah, it'll be 2 weeks in on Friday, so coming up
Yeah.
here.
I mean, I mean, with that now out, and you've had a couple of EPs previously, and a lot of singles. How do you sort of see your you know your evolution, as a person, and also as a sort of musician?
Um, I That's a good question because I was kind of reflecting back on that. I think I've gotten a lot more confident,
Mm,
and just willingness to explore, but also like delivery. Like I was
mm,
thinking or listening back to older projects, finding my voice,
yeah,
finding the tone, the register of which, learning how to manipulate my voice. So that's the main thing. Like hearing my voice from like my first project, and it's like very high, and I remember not liking that. So kind
right.
of learned how to manipulate my voice to now to something that, that I'm more happy with. So
Mm.
I think, yeah.
I mean, that sort of finding your voice at the sort of the outset. I mean, was that a almost like a kind of instinctive thing, and then you just then kind of like reacting to sort of how you feel about that, and then trying to find that sort of comfort, or that thing that was so, okay, that feels right for me now.
Yeah. I think I always created from that type of space,
Mm,
like just kind of like doing what felt right.
mm,
Um, so that continues, but of course, like now I have to be mindful of certain things. Like, I mean, we were kind of having that conversation prior to this recording.
mm,
Doing things that you enjoy, but at times to a certain degree, you do have to take into account to, the audience.
yeah,
So you do kind of somewhat maybe make a compromise here and there. But for me, it's always been about what feels right, whether it's like sonically or like taking a stance when
mm,
maybe, that can like
yeah.
ruffle some feathers, but I feel compelled to do so.
Mm.
So yeah.
I mean, it's an interesting one, talking about ruffling feathers, or kind of in either how you appear visually, sonically, lyrically, or whatever. Um, one thing that I really struggled with, like through a large part of my life, was worrying what other people thought. It was like the bane of my life, and
Hmm.
I don't know where. I mean, it was something that I had when I was a kid, and it kind of it stuck with me, and there were in either kind of work situations where the people that I was either sort of working with who had a certain, I guess, aura about them, and it feels quite. It gave me a sort of tension, but also kind of with sort of friendships as well, like people that I kind of grew up with and then maybe didn't see for a while, and I change, and then you think, okay, they know a previous version of me, and I'm sort of not that person now, and
Yeah.
and I just yeah, it's interesting, when when you're thinking about creating, about when you're creating different different music, when you're thinking about what you're going to do next, about ruffling those feathers and thinking, oh well, what will people think about it? I mean, has that come into your life as well?
It's interesting that you say that. So me as a person, as Ib,
Mm,
outside of music, I have historically been a lot like you said. I was very, it's become less and less as I
mm,
grow and get older. But definitely that's something that I have struggled with, and still to a certain degree still is
mm,
challenging and working
mm.
through thinking, caring too much, I feel like at times about what people think.
Yeah.
But kind of like that alter ego of EB Rebel,
Yeah.
I haven't been nearly as self-conscious,
Mm,
uh, in my artistry. So it's interesting how that works. Like
it
people who
is.
know me personally and they see like rebel stuff, they're like, that is like a completely different person.
That's not you.
Right. So, it
Wow.
in a way, maybe that has helped,
Yeah.
to know that I can be unapologetically myself,
Yeah.
and maybe has bled a little bit into my personal life and given me the confidence to be,
Mm.
more so like, my full self.
I remember reading an interview with Karen O from the Yeah Yeah Yeahs, and
Okay.
so she's like on stage really flamboyant and very kind of loud outfits, and she looks amazing.
Hmm.
And she said that that's one persona. Off stage, like completely like socially inept, doesn't like sort of being around people, like a real kind of like sort of just wants to be alone or just with kind of people that like she knew. So there's this real kind of, and I felt that sometimes, like there's almost there is a, yeah, you mentioned it, like an alter ego. It's a weird
Hmm.
sort of thing to kind of deal with, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, I know. The story behind like Sasha Fierce with Beyonce, like that
Mm,
kind of character was created to kind of get
yeah.
her outside of her box because she's said to be kind of more on the shy side, quiet is kind of the
y-
narrative for people who know her.
yeah.
So I kind of see that a lot from artists that I know personally, or just like bigger artists when they give interviews. A lot
Mm,
of artists are a little more, introverted or not as
yeah.
loud as maybe their persona is.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, because that's definitely the case for me. But, sometimes I think it's like that freedom, to be
Yeah.
an artist is like the ultimate form of freedom, especially when you don't have the constraints of like a label at times, or at least if you have a label that allows you to be
Yeah.
free. Every crazy thought that you have, if
Mm,
you have
mm,
the right skill and the right team, you can bring that, to life. So I think having that freedom,
yeah.
allows for you to be a little more grand, and plus,
Mm.
like I tell people who say that, like, oh, you're so much like, bigger, you know, when you're doing music. And I'm like, well, I mean, I don't think 24/7 I could walk around as Rebel. Like, that would be pretty intense, Like, that has to sleep a little bit. So, but yeah, I do think that that freedom allows you to be like, your full self, at least, in that time
Yeah.
period.
How much do you rely on, kind of like your sort of close friends, your, kind of people that you sort of trust to help you with that? Is that important for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to always have people, to have your back and people to
Yeah.
keep you kind of in check, or people that you can run stuff by.
Mm,
I have a group of artist friends or people who are just like really into music that I may run certain things through, like, hey, how do
yeah,
you
yeah.
feel about this? So I
Mm,
think it's good to not just create and be in a space by yourself and you don't really have any opinions. I mean, I think it's like, obviously you like all of your music, but it's good to at least like
yeah.
have a couple friends that can maybe vote on some things to kind of narrow it down for you.
Mm,
So, there are a handful of people I trust their ear, and I
mm,
know that they'll be honest. So I think it is important. You don't want to get to the point where you have a bunch of yes people around you and not
yeah,
really telling
sure.
you like what doesn't connect. So I think it's important to have those folks.
How do you do, again, this brings up an interesting point for me, and it's like when when you're writing
Hmm.
and you're kind of creating something, you have an idea and you yourself really connect with it, and it's like, okay, I really dig this, and then you think, okay, I'm gonna kind of share that. And one thing that I've sort of struggled with a little bit, and again, I'm far better at it now, but when you get sometimes a little bit close to something that you've created, and you have your kind of like ideal vision of it, and then you sort of ask a second opinion, and it's not quite what you want to hear. How do you, I mean, do you come across those situations, and if you do, how do you deal with those?
Yeah, I have. I've come across, like even with this EP, I'll kind of ask people like, "Hey, what were your favorite songs?" And they'll say like, "I like this one and that one." And I'm like, "Well, it's 6 songs. Like, what about what about the other
What about
four?
the
No
others?
feelings about the." So it's kind of those things, but different things will connect with different people, and I think that's the ideal of having more than just 2 songs on a project.
Yeah, yeah,
You have
yeah.
multiple to kind of attract different listeners. But I mean, I
Mm,
think it's important to like have a sense of self.
yeah,
Certain like technical things I'll take into account. Like if they're like, yeah, the mix sounds kind of, like maybe
mm,
I'll go back and take like a second look at that. But if it's just like it's sonically what like I
yeah,
can take that, you know,
yeah.
uh, but you definitely have to have that sense of self and be like, okay, I know that may not be for everybody, but I mean, at very least, I feel good about it. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with it.
And I think that's coming back to that conviction. If you really kind of you can have your opinions, and if you feel still okay, I appreciate that, but I'm going to kind of go with what I really believe. I guess there's always that kind of balance, and those, and I think again it comes to, I guess, open mindedness.
Hmm.
To willingness to you know accept other people's opinions, but then you don't necessarily have to take them, and they should abide by that as well.
Yeah.
If it's not too personal question, but when you were writing the album, what was kind of inspiring you? What was going on in your life that was sort of inspiring the writing?
Well, it's interesting because I, f- I would say most of those songs were probably created during COVID.
Okay, yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah,
so like I did a big like that's I think everybody if you were creative or found something to be creative
yeah.
about, but like I did a lot of creation during
Mm,
that time, and um yeah, I mean, I guess maybe just what was going on during that time.
mm,
And it's funny, I was working with a marketing firm, and one thing that they gathered from the project was like resilience, like a theme of resilience, which it
Yeah.
hadn't really struck me. But when I went back to listen, it is a lot of that. So
Mm,
going back to what was going on, maybe with COVID and unfortunately 2020, I lost two really, important family members.
yeah.
So, maybe that theme or ethos of resilience was,
Yeah.
unconsciously kind of, in my mind
Sort of
when
coming
creating that.
through. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. It's interesting. Those. I did on a kind of similar kind of theme about what sort of comes through into your mind. I did in during COVID, like very. I think our lockdowns in the UK started, around about March 2020,
Okay.
and I think it was over the summer, maybe 2 or 3 months after it started. And I did this. I'd formed like an arts club, like a kind of counterculture arts club, and we were doing some online stuff, and it wasn't just about music; it was about painting and poetry and all this sort of stuff. And we did like an online course about stream of consciousness writing. And I
Yeah.
don't know if you've ever done that, but it was the first time that I'd done it. And you basically are given a couple of prompts, words to kind of think about, to sort of set you going, and you just write. So it basically, like, everything sort of comes up. You don't think, because usually when you write, you're kind of thinking about what you're writing and the subject, but this is just like clear your mind of all that and just write what sort of comes up. And it was incredible, and it gives you a real kind of insight into some things that are sort of down there.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh shit, right, yeah. This is kind of not great, but yeah. So I guess I'm just sort of saying it's interesting that when you're kind of thinking about what to write about, those sort of subjects that matter to you, whether you're conscious or perhaps subconsciously, will come out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
Going back to when, if we could, again, if it's not sort of too personal, when you were a kid and sort of growing up, I'm just interested in kind of formative influences, things that remember, that started to sort of shape how you are as a person. And the reason I'm sort of interested, I mean, I've as I've got older, I've kind of thought back to some of the behaviors that I have now, and thinking, okay, where did they come from? And you start to sort of trace things back to things that sort of happened, and yeah, and they somehow stick with you. So I'm just
Hmm.
interested in, kind of like whatever you're prepared to disclose, what you kind of remember as who's that's forming the person that you are now.
Yeah. So I think it was a few things. So my mom was very supportive of
Mm,
individuality. Like
mm,
she never stifled me. Like
mm.
I was pretty young when I told her, like, yeah, I don't want to wear that. Like, and she was like, well, just give me the rest of this year and then next year you can do your thing. So like it was things like that, or just allowing me to speak my mind respectfully. Her thing was
Yeah.
always, you can speak your mind, but just be respectful. So
Mm,
like I always felt like I had a voice.
mm.
And, a lot of my friends or people I meet, when they talk about their upbringing, it was very much be seen and not heard.
Yeah.
So they kind of
Yeah.
struggled with advocating for themselves or speaking up. So that I never really struggled with.
Mm,
Um, and then when you were saying that, I was thinking of, because I was kind of reflecting on this a couple months ago.
mm,
Um, a lot of people recognize like the social commentary, some of the political aspects in my music.
mm.
There was a substitute teacher I had like in third grade, and we were standing to pledge allegiance to the flag, in America.
Yeah.
And she was a black woman, and she was like telling us black kids, why are y'all standing for the flag? Like that flag
Mm,
doesn't represent you.
Yeah.
obviously, everyone knows the history of slavery and all of that in
Yeah.
America. And that really stuck with me. I mean, even to this day.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that before then, I don't think I really looked at, I mean, because you're young, with third grade, you're 8 or something like that, or 10, I don't
Yeah.
know, whatever age. But I never looked at the world in that lens, like,
Mm,
like, and really started to examine
interesting.
that theory. So I think that in itself changed my thinking to really like assess what's going on
Yeah.
as a whole, and you know kind of sparked that activism in
Was
me.
it? Sorry, no,
Yeah.
carry on. Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt. No, carry on.
Oh, no, so I think when I think about kind of two of the pillars of an artist, when you speak
Yeah.
with marketing and they ask about like pillars of your
Yeah.
artistry, being, I guess, more like in your face or brash, but also like having that social commentary, not being afraid to go at that. And I think those two things growing up really shaped the way that I approach certain issues, or hey, even just my representation, my being,
In
being
your
a
life,
black,
yeah.
yeah, being a black queer artist.
Yeah. Yeah.
That that could be political in some cases.
Yeah.
So just not being afraid to present as myself.
Mm.
It's those things from childhood that I was given confidence to do.
And did your mum, kind of talk about, and any other relatives sort of talk about, kind of, whether you want politics, social issues, you know, what it meant to be, to sort of, to be black in America. Was that part of, kind of like household discussion? So that was always it was always there for you.
Yeah, so it's always the you have to be twice as good to get,
Yeah.
where everyone else is. So,
Mm.
you get that messaging a
Yeah.
lot. And being of a darker skin tone,
Mm.
even within the black community, you have challenges of colorism. So my mom did a really good job of, when I was younger, like it, expressing to me, that my complexion is beautiful. Don't let
Yeah.
anyone tell you differently. So, I did get that messaging at home, like
Yeah.
how you may present to the world, how the world may perceive you, but have that confidence to go into the world, to know that you're enough, to know you're beautiful.
Mm.
So yeah, I think that's important too, to have a sense of a good, healthy sense of
Mm.
self and identity, and that starts at home, 100%.
Yeah. I mean, I had that like with my dad, who, in terms of, sort of, I'm trying to think back to when it started, but I always remember that he was very anti-royalist. In here in the UK, and I
Hmm.
grew up with that. I kind of like, I was like, yes, yes, that's me as well. And yeah, that having that, uh, we used to talk about politics, a lot. He died a few years ago, but we always used to talk about that, from a very early age, about, kind of politics. He grew up, you know, having nothing, in the north of England, and got an education for himself. Um, the family wasn't going to do anything, and so those kind of politics of, I guess, sharing and sort of looking out for others was always, so I guess something that he kind of instilled in me, as well. I think it's really important to have that, those sort of voices around you as you're kind of growing up, and it does stick with
Hmm.
you as well, for sure.
Hmm.
Um, yeah. So, what about, kind of something like, as you're growing up and sort of getting into music, and kind of thinking about, the people that you sort of hanging out with. What sort of people were you sort of gravitating towards? As sort of
Uh,
friends or whatever.
yeah, I think to attract the kind of like alt crowd, which
Yeah, yeah,
that was kind of me anyway.
yeah,
So yeah, that was my friend group. People who were kind of into some of the same stuff I was into. I mean, a black kid from the South, like listening to alternative, rock music and
yeah.
dressing and like going to Hot Topic. I don't know if that's in the UK, but it's basically like a punk rock kind of
Mm,
store where you buy like the wallet chains and like
yeah, yeah,
bike stuff,
yeah.
that whole thing. So that's kind of the crowd, I hung with, and just kind of free kids,
Mm,
a lot of queer kids, so
mm.
just free people,
What do you what?
and
Sorry, I was sorry to interrupt. I was going to say, what do you think you learnt from that crowd that you were hanging out with? What do you think that kind of what did they give you?
well, they gave me a space to be myself and not be self-conscious about
Yeah,
kind of things I was into. I mean, it is a lot more accepted now. Like when I go on TikTok, there's like the Black alt TikTok,
yeah, yeah.
like there's a
True.
whole community.
Yeah.
But then, like, it wasn't really common.
Mm,
You were kind of looked at as a real other, for liking those certain things. So to have a group of kids that also were into that, or at least like didn't make you feel othered for being
yeah.
into it. So yeah, like
It's
again, that allowing you to have that sense of self.
it's funny how we do that, isn't it? That we kind of get together in in kind of groups, or that there's an expectation that you dress a certain way, you listen to certain types of music, you read certain things and things like that. It's yeah, those kind of sort of societal norms. I don't know. They're so constraining.
Yeah, and it bleeds into everything.
It
Uh,
does.
and it's not until you know, wisdom
Yeah.
kicks in, that you realize that, none of these things mean anything. All of these concepts were uh, man, person, human made.
Human made.
Yeah, all of these constraints, all of these labels, none of that matters.
Yeah.
So once you get to that point or closer to that point, you can start to live a little more freely.
I remember, I mean, I could like when I sort of first got into music that I like now, well, that I've always liked, because up until probably the age of, I don't know, what, 11, I was just sort of, I was trying to find, what I liked, and I didn't always know where to get it and stuff like that. But then, like when I first got into punk rock and hardcore, that was my thing when I first started listening to music. That was such a kind of life changer, and then it became like this. I don't know. It felt like this kind of straitjacket that you had to dress a certain way, and I'm going kind of going. I'm kind of going back to the '80s stuff now, right?
Hmm.
But there was like a way you should dress, the certain things that you should listen to, certain things you can't listen to, like you, or else you're not in the group, stuff like that. It was so fucking restrictive,
Hmm.
thinking back, and I think now of the. And this is why, going back to the intro when I was talking about sort of genres that you could only like this, or this, and that, and you stuck within that sort of genre box. And now I love it, the sort of music that's been created, which brings in so many different influences from anywhere, and it's just so much more, kind of liberating. But there is still that kind of element of, uh, I don't know, kind of keeping together and sort of like sticking within the boundaries. I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah. No, I'm glad that that's changing.
Mm,
Uh, because it is constricting. I know when I first started creating music, like the first song I put out commercially and, was picked up by like BET for a documentary and things like that, it was around the BLM
Yeah,
movement, Black
yeah,
Lives Matter. Excuse me. And so it attracted kind of like the super, socially conscious, the backpacker type of
yeah,
crowd.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
was like, I mean, this is cool, and I appreciate it because that crowd. I mean, I'm generalizing, but that crowd really appreciates like lyrical ability and skill. So it
yeah.
definitely is a compliment. But I was like, this is not the only kind of music I want to make, and I saw that kind of wall closing in.
Mm,
But I'm glad like now it's accepted to kind of do different things. And that's something I've been moving towards like the last few years,
mm,
like releasing different genres because I listen to all, different types of things. Like right
yeah,
now I'm not even listening to hip hop. My wave right now is like alt R&B, like a lot of the women that are creating alt R&B are creating like some interesting stuff.
yeah,
So that's
yeah,
like mostly what I've been listening to right now.
yeah,
And I have my, maybe more alternative rock stages or, I
yeah.
kind of go in like phases of what like I'm really consuming.
Mm,
And I've always been like that. I've always been very diverse in what I listen to. And that is going to be reflected in the music that I make. So I'm
mm,
glad that it's the lanes are like widening and what's acceptable to make,
yeah,
is kind of being more celebrated of it and just having one note to your whole discography. Like
yeah. Absolutely,
that's
yeah,
not exciting.
yeah. I mean, I did a sort of written interview with Cara Jackson,
Hmm.
who's playing. I mean, I guess like kind of more sort of folk music. Um,
Okay.
I think she's in just outside of Chicago. As a sort of black woman playing folk music. The kind of barriers that she's faced. Similarly with Lizzie No playing more kind of country kind of style
Hmm.
again, kind of breaking those kind of boundaries again. That's sort of what it's about. And
Yeah.
again, sort of being kind of strong enough, and the resilience again to sort of keep sort of doing that, finding your people who support you. Is absolutely the way forward.
Yeah.
So, in terms of the kind of lyrical stuff, I'm a it's a word that's got used probably sort of too much. Um, some words get used too much, and then the meaning starts to get diluted a little bit, doesn't it? But like
Yeah.
so something like relatability, and I think that's what you sort of really got in your lyrics, and I do think it's like a really important thing, because I think sometimes how to get a message across without being preachy. And I know that a lot of kind of punk and hardcore bands have sort of struggled with that, as not
Hmm.
being sort of too preachy, but how you get your message across and relate to your listeners. How how does that sort of work for you?
Um, yeah, I never wanted to come across like that. Like I'm, finger,
You're definitely
way,
not. You're
yeah.
definitely not.
Yeah, I never wanted to be there. I think I try to come from like my perspective,
Mm,
and kind of just tell my story.
your
Um,
story, yeah,
Even like, the Don't Cares, that was that the BLM song. It was
yeah.
like a lot of I
That's your story.
yeah, yeah, it's my
Yeah,
story. Even when I talk about mental health, I'm not saying you should go to therapy. What I'm saying is like
yeah,
this is what I struggle with, this is how I
yeah.
got to that. So I think just coming from your perspective and people like you said can relate to that. Like, okay, like I'm not alone in this. This person went through this and they, this is the path they took. So maybe that's an option for me. So I think,
Mm,
coming from a first person perspective maybe helps people not feel like they're being preached to.
mm. How does you're obviously a solo artist, but with other
Hmm.
people around you. Uh, how do you approach your kind of collaborations?
I I figured this question was going to come up,
Did you?
and yeah,
God,
it
I'm
seemed like it
so
was.
predictable, aren't I?
It seemed like it was going that way, which is good though, because that's literally a goal of mine, like an artist's goal. I try to set goals every year. Was
Mm,
more collaboration,
mm,
because I think it's important, for different perspectives, or just like a different style, like
mm,
a homie of mine, Brody Odie, shout out to him. Like we just did a track together, and and we have different personalities. And I did a reference. I was like, I want you to come in the chorus like this, and he was like, well, I don't think I sound as good as you do like doing that.
yeah.
So he did a different version, but it works. And I was like, I really like this because it shows the two
Mm,
different personalities. And I think you get stuff like that, like
yeah.
just like different styles, and I don't know, it just makes things interesting. And at a
Yeah.
certain point, you kind of get tired of just hearing yourself, like you said, as a solo artist, like but I think it just brings out another level of creativity, and
Mm,
like learning how to compromise to a certain degree. Like,
yeah.
I know I spoke about not, but like when you work with someone, you do have to, and I think it's healthy to at least know when to compromise. It's a good exercise. So yeah, that's definitely a goal of mine, to
Mm,
collaborate more. Like I find it fun to do.
mm,
Sometimes it's hard to do. Like with this friend, we've been talking about this for like 4 years, trying to find a track, and
yeah.
then I started writing this when I was like, I know exactly who. And so like we're like finally, like
Yeah, we finally got
yeah,
something. It's
yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned that sort of compromise because I I think I often think I wonder how when you kind of like either sort of writing together or you're in the studio and you just kind of laying down your parts and things like that. How to get the best out of each other, and because everybody has the, like you say, their own personalities, sometimes their own ways of working. Some are more open-minded than others. I mean, I guess you choose your collaborative partners carefully, but um sometimes I think you have to be aware of, I guess what I'm thinking is the yeah, being aware of what makes other people tick,
Hmm.
and also they need to be kind of like aware of what makes you tick as well, to get the best out of each other.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm not even like this type of artist that's very like braggadocious. Like when I mean, in songs, yeah, but like when I'm talking about artistry, I'm not usually like that type of person. But
Yeah.
I do think I do a good job of identifying who
Mm,
would be a good fit for this song.
yeah.
And just something about that track, I was like, I know he'll kill that. And just like
Yeah.
another song, Texas Cowgirl, which is like my most streamed song, I knew that Juice Leroy, that I asked to be on that song, I was like, I know he's gonna kill it. And I mean, I'm humble enough to say people have gravitated to his
Yeah.
verse on that song,
Mm,
um, and that's perfectly fine. Like to me, that's an accomplishment, like,
yeah.
and a compliment, because it's like he felt enough about that song to bring like 100% his A game. He could have just gave me whatever, like throwaway, whatever, but he
Yeah.
really did a great job on his verse. Just like my friend for this new track, like he did a great job. So like
Really great job.
yeah, being humble enough to just let people
Mm,
be free to create like the best, verse or chorus or whatever that they can give me, like not to put such restraints on people. Yeah.
and how do you? Because I'll give you an example. I was going to ask you how you feel about you know, perhaps going into a studio perhaps with somebody that perhaps you don't know or you don't know as well,
Hmm.
and how you give your true self. in those sort of situations where you don't know the other person. Because I think I know how I would kind of
Hmm.
react to it. Maybe not so much now. Maybe I'll be a bit better now, but certainly a few years ago, that would have been kind of quite tough. Especially, I think talking about those people that you that I was talking about, that I worry what they may think.
Hmm.
How do you approach that? You just kind of is the self belief really overrides everything?
Yeah, so I think, like you said, it takes time and practice, quite
Mm,
frankly, to be okay with like letting stuff out in front of people. I think a real kind of exercise for me was, I'm in New York, so like going to different studios to record, like as a
yeah,
different engineer, and you don't know them, but you
yeah,
still
yeah.
have to be comfortable enough. Like I know a song that I recorded, haven't released it yet, but it's called Dad, and it's going into my non-existent relationship with my father,
Right.
and kind of like going through all that. And I knew this. I mean, I had sessions with this engineer before, but like, he doesn't know my life. I don't really know his. Like, we
Yeah.
just kind of like working, together. And I remember creating that song and like him looking over into the room, like, like, damn,
Wow.
so, you have to get to the point where it's like, this has to come out, and whatever
Yeah.
people feel about it kind of is what it is. And that's one of the moments I was like, okay, like
Mm,
what I'm doing is connecting with people who don't know me, who, just the way, I mean, these people, engineers work with a bunch of people,
yeah.
but the way he was like looking like, damn, like they
Really.
really
Wow.
getting, yeah. So it's that, just really, like you said, it's having that sense of self. And also, I mean, when you're an artist and you start to record a lot of different places and work with a lot of different people, it does become easier to do that.
Yeah. I was that's an interesting link into something else I was going to ask was about the importance of your physical environment, because obviously you how long have you been in New York now?
Be 9 years in July.
9 years. So
Hmm.
so I mean, what has been the influence of New York, the physical environment being on your, I mean, I guess that's like through 9 years, that's kind of through your musical,
Yeah,
from when
pretty
you first
much.
started putting music
Yeah,
out. So
yeah.
so what's been the impact?
Well, I think, I mean, being in a city like New York, is different. Like you'll find a place somewhere.
Yeah.
Like there's a
Yeah.
pocket of people who,
Yeah.
and I think coming out here and really immersing myself in the scene here allowed
Yeah.
me to meet a lot of different people. Um, and like you can't be too weird here. So I think it gave me like that spirit of just like trying
Yeah.
different stuff and whatever. And I
Mm,
think having access to a lot of different studios, or a lot of different like, like ASCAP is
mm,
based here.
yeah.
So I was able to like do some writing workshops there,
Mm,
or go to seminars there. So it's stuff like that. Like I'm Texas born. Like if I stayed in Texas, I wouldn't have access to those type of things, because the,
yeah.
the the scene is still growing. It's growing. I'm proud of what the scene is doing. But it's still taking time to get
It's
there.
taking
Now
time.
here, yeah, I was able to like, get a lot of that. So I think it did help me grow
Mm.
artistically.
There's a freedom, isn't there? I mean, I'm in London, and you can be with people or you can disappear. You can,
Hmm.
and you can, if you feel like you need time to, be yourself or work out who you are, you can do that in a city. Um,
Hmm.
I've been in London since end of 2008, so that's like 16 years or so, just over 16 years, and yeah, been a huge difference for me. and from where I was previously, and it, yeah, definitely kind of like has that. I don't know. You kind of you sort of feed off the energy. You see other people around, and people sort of give less fucks about things and stuff like that. And it's like, okay, yeah, that works for me as well. And it's
Yeah.
yeah, there's a positivity, isn't there? I guess it
Yeah.
depends, sort of what stage your life at. I know that some people, kind of prefer the, more kind of solitude, and that's totally fine. But I guess you're working with what works for you now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when I create, I do like solitude. I've never
Yeah,
been that artist that has like 5 people in the studio. That's not
yeah,
productive to me. If you're
yeah,
in the studio, it's because you're adding something, not just
yeah,
like just chilling. So
mm,
yeah, I mean, most of the time I'm creating, definitely writing. If it's not collaborating, is by myself, and
mm.
if I'm recording, it's myself and the engineer, or if, the collaborator is there. But I just don't have a lot of other people around.
Do you feel more what's the word, willing to sort of take risks in in your, I guess in your music, but also in any sort of aspects of your life, as you're just kind of getting older and sort of more experience with music.
Yeah, no, I think that pursuing music, has like helped me be okay. I've noticed that I'm not, I don't love change.
Mm,
However,
right.
I'm not afraid of it.
Yeah.
And I think that, music has helped. I mean, music brought me out here, 3,000 miles away from home.
Yeah.
Um, music has forced me to be in front of crowds. No one knows me from a can of paint, but you have to,
Yeah.
give the people a show, or walking into a studio where it's the first time you're meeting this person, or doing interviews the first time you've met, so it's a lot
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
you're not, a lot of situations where you're not familiar with
Yeah.
the people or the surroundings, but that's just like the nature of the business. So it bleeds into like your personal life. It's like, okay, I'm not afraid to go to this place by myself because,
Yeah.
whatever. Like I've been through there. I'm not afraid to maybe move. I'm not afraid to take this stand. So I think it has bled into that a little bit.
I guess I think right at the start you mentioned about kind of briefly about personal growth, and I guess that kind of getting out of your comfort zone, for
Hmm.
doing certain things is important for that, in
Yeah.
in everything, both for for yourself, but also for your music as well. Doing things that maybe you're like, oh, okay, I've not done that before. I'm not sure what to expect, but that's you get through that. That's can be so beneficial.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my family in general, so it's interesting. I'm the first person who moved outside of the city, even, but definitely the
Mm,
state. We were just raised to be tight knit, and maybe that, leaving the nest is not
yeah,
easy.
yeah,
But my mom always, pushed me to, go outside of my comfort zone. Her favorite saying was, I don't want you to be afraid to fly. And now
brilliant.
she regrets it. She was like, yeah, like you haven't came back, but
I didn't mean flying that far.
exactly. But, that's something that stuck with me. And I think it gave
Yeah,
me like that fearlessness. It's like, even like that whole saying, even if your voice shakes, like
yeah.
speak up, you know, even if you're scared, go do that thing that,
Mm.
may make you grow. So yeah, I think definitely, trying new things or doing something, that's outside of your comfort zone, in most cases can't do anything but help you grow.
So what's coming next? I know you've only just brought out an EP, so it's probably not the right time. But I mean,
Yeah.
do you live do you live day to day, or do you have you know like a kind of plan, or do you just take it each day as it comes?
Yeah, so on Friday, the video for Numero Uno is gonna release. So that's
Mm,
like the immediate future.
yeah.
Um, but as far as the rest of the year, I'm kind of floating the idea of releasing like a very small EP, not even the 6 songs like this one.
Mm,
Just a small collection of songs, maybe like a three song EP.
mm.
Maybe just to close out the year, perhaps. But I mean, since December till now, I've been working on and promoting this piece, so it definitely needs to be
Yeah,
like some space in
for
between.
sure.
I admire artists like Russ, who is like releasing a song every week.
Yeah,
That's a lot of work for one,
that's a
and
lot.
then two, and two, I feel like you gotta live or breathe a little bit, or else I feel
I
like
agree.
for me personally, songs will start to sound the same. So I
Yeah,
think, give me a little space in between this project and whatever's next to kind of like get into a different mind space.
yeah, yeah. That makes sense. You got to come
Yeah.
over to the UK
Yeah, I need
sometime.
to. Apparently, we've done some ads and things like that, and France, France is growing.
Yeah,
Kind of, gotta spread it out. But like, yeah, I would love to come over and
yeah.
maybe like do a little Euro tour or something. It would be
Absolutely.
nice.
That would be
Yeah.
awesome. That'd be awesome.
Hmm.
Brilliant, EB. Thank you so much. That's been
Yeah.
really awesome to talk to you. Thanks so much for everything that we've talked about. It's been great.
Thank you. No, thanks for having me. This is my type of conversation.